I bet at least a few of you never expected to be watching a Minecraft video about the Book of Boba Fett. And I bet Bib Fortuna never expected that Boba Fett would inherit Jabba's palace. But here we are. And I'm building Jabba's palace in Minecraft to celebrate the release of the Book of Boba Fett, while also exploring some of the locations and sets they used behind the scenes to shoot Return of the Jedi, which is where Jabba's palace first showed up in Star Wars. So, when I'm recreating something in Minecraft, it's important to know the building's layout and spatial geography before I start building. And that's where research comes in, where it sits in the terrain and how it does so. But since I'm stuck here in the past when the show isn't out yet, the only reference material I have is from Return of the Jedi and the first Boba Fett teaser from 2020. Oh, and the Clone Wars. But that doesn't count. So I need to figure out the scale of the buildings so I know how big to make them. Traditionally, doors in Minecraft are 2 blocks tall, so I assumed that height for this door in this shot from the 2020 teaser and compared it to the door's height in pixels, which helped give me a rough estimate of the length and width of the main building. Algebra. Didn't think I'd need it, but here we are. So I used a tool called World Edit to create a 52 block diameter cylinder in Minecraft, which is the width I found using this method. And honestly, that seems way too small. So I tried again. And this time, I used the width of the staircase and got a diameter of 84 blocks. Another guess, but this one just feels right. So I went with it and extrapolated that measurement out to the length and width in blocks of all the buildings and all of the little features on them. And so it was time to load up World Painter, which is like MS Paint for Minecraft, except it outputs fully featured Minecraft terrain instead of really weird kitty drawings. It's a lot faster than doing it by hand. So I started placing down the building diameters based on what I could see from Return of the Jedi and the 2020 Boba Fett teaser, and that's when I had my first crisis of confidence. Why is the tall tower placed behind the main building in this shot, as well as this shot of the back door? Like, if both cameras are facing each other, then why isn't the tall tower in front in one of these shots? The problem is, I'm a little scared. It's been 2 years since I've done a mega project like this, and I have just under 2.5 months from the date I'm starting this project until the show's release date. I might miss my deadline. And I have to tell you, I am really excited for this show, so I want to make sure this releases on time. Anything that falls in that era between the original and sequel trilogies, I'm pretty much going to be a sucker for, because that was the era of the expanded universe that I was the most into. There was Thrawn, and the X-Wing books, and, well, it was just the best escape. So I stared at these shots for a while, and I realized that the shadows in the droid's shot are pointing to the left and they're long, which means that it's the morning and the droid's shadows are pointing towards the west. So now we know where the cardinal directions are. And looking at the ROTJ version of the backdoor shot, well, you have the sun setting in the west, which means that both cameras are not facing each other after all. The backdoor shot is actually facing west, while the droid shot is facing north-ish. And that means there are actually 2 mid-sized towers, but one is always missing from either shot. See, this is the weird stuff I have to deal with. I also left out the small turret-type towers seen here because they weren't present in the 2020 teaser, and with those problems solved, I got to work building mountains.
Mountains, Gandalf.
The fun thing about these mountains is that they're a real place you can visit called 20 Mule Team Canyon in Death Valley National Park. Somebody named Mitch Darby hiked out there in 2015 and wrote a blog about how he found the exact ravine. And from his photos, it still looks shockingly like that brief shot you see in Return of the Jedi. I linked it in the description if you want to check it out. Time to build the exterior. See those cylinders just popping in? I'm using a tool called World Edit to build the towers. You know, they really should think of a more imaginative title for these Minecraft tools. World Painter, World Edit, there's a whole world of creative names out there. Anyway, this would take days to build by hand, but since I know the widths and heights of each feature, because I spent a few hours in Photoshop comparing pixels, I can very quickly build these. A few screw-ups later, I finish them, just in time for the full Book of Boba Fett trailer to appear. Literally. I finished them literal hours before it showed up on the internet. And that was a cool trailer, but... So what this really means is I have to finally address something I was hoping to avoid, which is that the placement of the buildings make no sense from show to show, and sometimes even from shot to shot within each trailer. So look at this mid tower in this shot. It's sticking out from the main building so that in this other shot, it should be in front of the main building, but it's actually behind. Just Why? Like, there's a lot of other design choices here that cost me grief, but that one is the worst. Still, it is a cool trailer, right? Well, when I have to make guesses based on little to no reference material, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. And now I have to redesign the terrain, and that's important because it's time consuming, and now there's only 2 months until the Book of Boba Fett releases, and less than that if you factor in holiday plans.
Now is the time to panic!
So, a few things became evident. First, based on the half-buried forward tower in the trailer, the sand level seems to be a lot higher than it was in Return of the Jedi. Maybe it drifted into the valley in the 6 years between then and now. Either way, that raised the desert floor by about 25 blocks. I also couldn't figure out where Boba Fett's balcony/bedroom is because I couldn't pinpoint its location from the trailer, so I left it out for now. I also left out the hangar bay because at the time, I didn't know where it was located. It's actually right about here. But based on the second trailer, the one that sent me panicking, the main building in this trailer is the same size as what I calculated originally. Praise the maker, that saves me a ton of extra work. So I revised the geography, pasted in the buildings from the previous world, and rebuilt the forward tower. Oh, and I also re-added the small turret type towers because they were back again in the full trailer, even though they were gone again a trailer later. Make up your minds already, Disney. Now comes the fun part, detailing the towers. I tried to match the grime layers on the exteriors of the satellite towers as closely as possible. World Edit has a kind of paintbrush-like feature that lets you do this. On the main building, I added the door, which seems a little small looking at one of the later TV trailers for the show, but also about the right size if you're looking at Return of the Jedi. I chose to stick with what I'm calling the ROTJ Classic scale because rescaling the door to be larger would also mean rescaling the buildings. Their size is already so big that they're pushing up against Minecraft's ability to show them from a distance on most people's computers. Besides, George Lucas played with the scale of that door too while he was tinkering with the Blu-ray version, so good enough. I then detailed from bottom to top, starting with this stairway that I swear wasn't in the Return of the Jedi version. And on the main balcony level, I added some metallic detailing to the walls and windows and a hallway to make some of the interior visible from the outside. Then I added in the grime layers, matching them to the shots in the trailers, and this is the perfect example of being too detailed in Minecraft. Doing it this way caused way too much contrast between the textures, so I pulled them back for a bit less accurate but better fitting version. Then a quick detail pass on the forward tower because, silly me, I forgot this one existed, and now we finally get to work on the interior. I began by putting a giant hole in the interior. I mean, how else do you expect me to build in there? The entrance tunnel snakes in a slight S-curve, and it's also an arch, and that's a really hard combo to do by hand. And now I'm getting nervous because with American Thanksgiving coming up, it's pretty much the end of November already, and I need to have this video out to you at the end of December. And every attempt I make, well, it's failing. With Christmas factored in, I have roughly 3 weeks left, and that's freaking me out because my last comparable project took me 4 months to complete. But breathe, I'm starting to flail. It's time to get smart about it. I outline the walls, then use lapis to sketch out the rough horizontal path each arch would take. And then I filled it all in by hand. 4 evenings from starting the tunnel, I ended up with a fairly passable version. But not to worry, because the time I spent working on that, I gained back in the throne room. I knocked that one out in about 4 hours, which buys me valuable time. I started with the main staircase because it's a signature part of the room. I included the crack and the wind chimes and worked my way roughly clockwise around the room, using a million screenshots in this very low-res exploded diagram of Jabba's throne room from Wikipedia to build in all the details. For example, Bib Fortuna's private elevator, which is here. No, here. Well, it's one of these. I can't tell because the exploded drawing is so low-res, but it's where he and the droids came from when they first entered Jabba's presence, and why R2 never goes down those stairs. Also because, he was on rollers and he didn't have a CGI jetpack at the time. So the alcoves are easy to do, so are the grates to the Rancor pit. Jabba's throne is a little bit harder, but I guess it's Boba Fett's throne now, isn't it? Oh, and yes, that big ol' lighting rig there is actually in the film. It's just barely visible during the dance sequence. Then the alcove where Carbonite Frozen Han hangs around, and finally, the stairs Han and Luke come up. Now, I didn't know they came up 2 separate staircases until I built this, really. I think this actually looks pretty good, especially with these BSL shaders. If you'd like to download this map to see for yourself, click the link in the description after watching the video. I included handy instructions so you can get set up on PC Java Minecraft. And I hosted on my own space so you don't have to deal with that awful adfly. Seriously, what a terrible website. And then there's the Rancor pit. You know, I'd like to say this room was a giant toothy problem, but come on, this video isn't that scripted. It came out rather well, so next was the dungeon level, starting with what I assume was Malakili the Rancor Keeper's bedroom. I used the bedroom's location and the exploded diagram to triangulate how far down I needed to take Han and Luke's staircases to reach the dungeon level. Surprisingly far. A few minor departures from the diagram later, and I have dungeons that fit with what you see on screen, and I can move on to the droid workshop. So Evie is the droid R2 and C-3PO talked to in there, and after Jabba died, she had an oil bath, rethought her life, and became a bartender droid in The Mandalorian. And it was there that she was voiced by Mark Hamill. Now, this was fun to detail. I got to look at all the piping and weird stuff they threw into that set, and then built it as close as possible in Minecraft. And you see that weird droid and pieces behind 3PO? That's the remains of CZ4, but Anthony Daniels used that suit to play CZ3 in the original Star Wars in a blink and you'll miss it moment. It's the only other droid he played in the series. Halfway through, the cheeriness of my surroundings didn't strike me as oppressive enough, so I decided to do a palette swap on the entire dungeon. The walls really are the same material as the walls in Jabba's throne room, but in Minecraft, I just wasn't able to throw enough shadow on them to make it to the level of dreary to really sell the whole droid torture vibe old Evie's got going on down there. So I used World Edit to perform what's essentially a find replace for each block type. I used various types of deep slate to make the dungeon more gloomy, and then built decorative transition sections in the two stairwells. I finished off the dungeon by building the utility hallway and the side rooms that split off from the droid workshop. Then, back up in the throne room, I added a few essential extra details. The dinner table from the trailer, a table and light to the fourth alcove, and a campfire to the spit behind the throne. I also moved the steps here back a few blocks because we got a better look at that area in one of the TV trailers for Boba Fett, and then, what the hey, I made the trapdoor work. I set out to build Jabba's Palace as a lead-in to Season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett. I had about 2 months when I started, fretted the whole way that I wouldn't have enough time, and what I ended up with is what I think is a pretty good Jabba's Palace that's a combination of the Return of the Jedi and Book of Boba Fett versions. They're not completely identical, but they are close. Where there are conflicts between the versions, the Boba Fett version usually won out, like their terrain and staircase out front. But in other areas, like the scale of the entrance door, ROTJ won out. Unfortunately, this video didn't get edited in time to come out when the first episode of this show did. And yeah, I'm a little disappointed. Things don't always go smoothly. I tried to plan this whole thing out, but every time I hit a roadblock, my anxiety shot up. And like my experience building this map, life will take you on unexpected twists and turns. And I guess what I learned, and if I'm honest, what I keep having to learn, is that you have to be okay with things not going the way you planned. And if you keep practicing that, you'll come out the other side having beaten a Rancor or two, and you'll be a whole lot wiser for doing it. And perhaps that philosophy could work for the TVs and movies we watch. You'll probably enjoy more things, like... Nah, I'm not even gonna go there. Some things really are sacred. Back from the dead! Okay, that's better. You remember how the towers moved around from shot to shot in the trailers? Well, missing my deadline gave me the opportunity to realize that it's not just a problem with the trailers. It's a problem throughout the whole show. And you can't just chalk it up to unfinished visual effects. So why do they move around? That's the question I'm tackling in my next video, and I'm using Minecraft to do it. So click on it here when it's available.